Wait, that's real? If you've always assumed a submarine is just a metal tube that goes underwater, this list is going to shift that. Surcouf. This French submarine was unlike anything the world had seen when it launched in 1929. It wasn't built just to travel underwater. It was designed to fight like a warship on the surface and then disappear beneath the waves. It carried 2 heavy naval guns on its deck, the kind you'd normally see on a full-sized surface ship, not a submarine. But here's something interesting. It also stored a small scouting aircraft inside a sealed hangar built into the hull. Launch it, gather information, recover it, all on one submarine in the 1920s. That combination had never been tried on a single vessel before. The I-400 class submarine. Japan took that concept and pushed it far further. The I-400 was the largest submarine of the entire Second World War, and each vessel could carry 3 full-sized bomber aircraft inside a pressurized hangar. Launch them from the surface, strike a target, recover them after, all from a submarine. But the range is what really puts it in context. These submarines could travel roughly 2/3 of the way around the Earth without stopping to refuel. That kind of reach, combined with the ability to launch aircraft, was something the world genuinely hadn't encountered before. If you're enjoying this, a subscribe helps the channel more than you'd think. The American NR-1. This submarine spent decades doing significant work while almost nobody knew it existed. The NR-1 was a small nuclear-powered research vessel operated by the U.S. Navy, and it was in quiet service for over 40 years. It wasn't designed for weapons. It was designed for the ocean floor. It had external lighting, viewing ports, and mechanical arms that let it work directly at the bottom of the sea, recovering lost equipment, supporting research that no other vessel at that depth could replicate. It was decommissioned in 2008. Have you ever heard of it before this video? Most people haven't, and that's kind of the point. USS Halibut. The Halibut started out as a standard missile submarine. Then the Navy quietly transformed it into one of the most effective intelligence-gathering vessels of the Cold War. It was used in a covert operation where divers would exit the submarine underwater, attach listening devices to Soviet communications cables on the ocean floor, and return weeks later to collect the recordings. The operation ran for years before being exposed. And through all of that, the Halibut never used its weapons in combat. Its power was never in what it could fire. It was in what it could hear. USS Albacore. The Albacore never fought a battle, and it still changed submarine design more than most vessels that did. It was built in the 1950s as a pure testing platform. Its only job was to answer one question. What shape should a submarine hull actually be? The answer was a teardrop, a smooth, rounded hull that cuts through water far more efficiently than the long, flat shapes that came before it. Every modern submarine in service today uses a hull design that traces directly back to what the Albacore demonstrated. It never launched a single torpedo in its career. Some ideas turn out to be more powerful than any weapon. What submarine on this list surprises you the most? Let me know in the comments. I actually read everyone. HL Hunley. This Confederate submarine from the American Civil War holds a record no other vessel in history has touched. In 1864, it became the first submarine to successfully attack and sink an enemy warship in combat. And it did that with 8 men turning a hand crank connected to the propeller. That's the entire propulsion system, a sealed iron tube, 8 people, and a hand crank. The Hunley went missing shortly after the operation. It was located on the sea floor in 1994 and recovered in 2000. Researchers are still studying it today. Over 150 years later, it still hasn't given up all of its answers. Turtle. This is where submarine history actually begins. Built during the American Revolutionary War in the 1770s, the Turtle was a single-person wooden vessel designed to attach an explosive device to the hull of an enemy ship while submerged. The attempt was made in 1776 in New York Harbor against a British warship. It didn't succeed. The hull couldn't be penetrated in the right place. But here's something worth sitting with. Someone built a working human-powered submarine in 1776 and actually used it in a real military situation. That is not a failure. That is the beginning of every submarine on this list. Intelligent whale. This one has one of the stranger stories in early American naval history. The Intelligent Whale was a hand-powered submarine developed in the 1860s for the U.S. Navy, and after years of delays and failed demonstrations, it was finally evaluated in 1872. It could carry up to 11 people, which was impressive for the time, but the Navy considered it impractical and moved on. Here's what's interesting about that outcome. The experience with the Intelligent Whale made American naval leadership deeply reluctant to invest in submarines at all for years afterward. One machine, one disappointing result, and it quietly shifted the direction of an entire technology. Brandtaucher. Germany's first submarine. Built in 1850, it was constructed within a few months with the goal of disrupting enemy ships during a naval blockade. It sank during a test in Kiel Harbor in 1851, not during a mission, but in a routine trial. The crew survived. The submarine sat on the seafloor for over 30 years before being raised in 1887. Today, it's on display in a museum in Germany. A vessel built in 1850, still physically intact more than 170 years later. That makes it the oldest preserved submarine in the world, which is an honestly remarkable thing to think about. Resurgam. This British submarine from 1879 was not built by a naval engineer or a government institution. It was designed and largely funded by a clergyman named George Garrett. It ran on a steam engine, which is an interesting approach for a machine meant to go underwater. Steam was generated on the surface, and then the vessel would submerge and run on stored heat until it ran out. The Resurgam was lost at sea in 1880 while being towed to a demonstration just a year after it was completed. It never had the chance to prove what it could do, but the name says something about the mindset behind it. Resurgam is Latin for "I shall rise again." That's not just a name, that's an intention. 10 submarines, 10 completely different ideas of what an underwater vessel could be. And what I keep coming back to is that almost none of these were built by massive institutions with unlimited resources. Most of them came from people who were convinced something was possible before there was any proof it could work. If this video was worth your time, subscribing is how you help this channel keep going, and it means more than you might think.